We believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I am your host, Laura Thorson. Tonight, I'll be talking to Cade Lamb. Cade is a combat veteran, former missionary, and host of the Fear Not, Do Right podcast. Cade brings a unique perspective, not only because of his background, but also because of his upbringing. He happens to also be the son of the, I guess, could you say famous or infamous Arizona Sheriff, Mr. Mark Lamb. Cade and I will be diving into his approach to leadership, training, and personal responsibility, among other things. Who knows what else will come up, but for sure we'll be touching on those things. So I'll be bringing him on shortly. Looking forward to that. So stay tuned for that in just a little bit. But first, if you're watching this as a replay or you're new, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Please drop in the comments where you're watching from. We always want to hear from you. The reason this show is live is so that you can interact with us live on the show. So if you have any questions or comments along the way, please put those in the comments. And if you have questions for Cade, we'll be doing a live Q&A at the end of the broadcast. This episode is brought to you by Haven Defense Company. Brent and Marissa Hickman from Colorado own Haven Defense Company. It's a family-owned business, and their top-notch holsters are made on-site by Brent and maybe Marissa too. I'm not sure how involved she is in that. But they have years of experience and expertise in the holster business. They are my go-to people for all things concealment and all things holsters. I trust them very, very much, and so I recommend them highly. Very good people there. So check out Haven Defense Company in the link in the description below if you want to learn more. Also, Mr. Adam Winch, the founder of Defenders USA, is with me tonight behind the scenes helping me. Thank God he is back because I need all the help that I can get. And if you're interested in learning more about him or Defenders USA, go to defenders-usa.com to learn more about all the instructors there. Hey, Adam, how are you doing tonight?
Side note, Laura might be getting her head amputated tomorrow, so stay tuned.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I've never been under anesthesia before, but I have to go under tomorrow and really not looking forward to it. So this is like my last hurrah before I sign the paperwork that, the fine print that you could die. Probably won't die, but you could. So yeah, this is the last hurrah before that. So anyway, lots of prayers. I would really appreciate that. Thanks for bringing that up, Adam. Really appreciate you bringing that up. Trying not to think about it. Okay. All right. So a few announcements before we begin. I'll be bringing Cade on here in just a little bit, but I want to let you know that Defenders Live is now officially on almost all podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So be sure to check out the audio only version there. And leave a review if you like what you hear. And you can also make sure you don't miss out on another episode of Defenders Live by going to defenders-live.com and sign up for those email notifications at the bottom of the homepage. I send out an email every week so you'll know what to expect coming up. And we do have a private Facebook group you can join as well. So don't be shy. If you have comments during the show, feel free to chime in. We love hearing from you. And again, we'll have that live Q&A at the end of the broadcast. Are you guys chiming in yet? Oh yeah, look at all these guys. This is great. I love it. Gary from Helena, I see you. Scars from Ohio. Brent and Marissa from Colorado. Thank you for watching. Kathy and Lynn. I always forget to say Lynn. So hey, Kathy and Lynn from Michigan. Good to see you here. Looks like Adam shouting out from Arizona. Chuck from Texas. Hey, Chuck, great to see you. Tracy from Montana. Tracy's a fan of Haven Defense Company, too, it looks like. That's great. Eric from Oregon is shouting out. Hey, Eric. And Deb from Florida. Glad to see you here tonight. So thank you guys for shouting out in the comments. Looking forward to getting on with this interview with Cade Lamb. So Cade is an Eagle Scout, a combat veteran, and an entrepreneur. And after serving a 2-year mission, he enlisted in the United States Army, where he deployed to Iraq in 2020. Now newly married, Cade is the host of the Fear Not, Do Right podcast, where he talks about practical solutions to complex problems facing Americans. And for those of you that don't know, as I said before, he is Sheriff Mark Lamb's son as well. So let's bring Cade onto the show. Hey, Cade.
Hey, how's it going, Laura?
Cade's got like either the best voice or the best microphone on the planet, maybe a combination of both, but it's really good to have you on. You sound great.
Thanks. My mom says I have a face for radio, so.
That's why you decided to do the podcasting. Although you do have a YouTube channel as well, right?
Kind of. So there is a YouTube channel. It does exist, but the content's a little sparse right now. But that's something that'll be coming out in the future. So.
Right. Yeah, you had a little hiatus there for a little bit, I think. I don't think YouTube likes you very much, Cade.
No. So, originally when I started my podcast, I only got about 6 episodes in before they completely took my platform down. And then, which was pretty awesome. Such a small platform could get banned.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, their eyes were on you, I'm sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, it's hard for me to know where to begin with you. There's a lot we could go down, and I'm going to try to only take an hour of your time because I respect people's time and the people watching too. So I want to get the most bang out of this as we can. So, and like I told you before, if there's a direction you want to go, just let me know. But let's start with, because not everybody knows who you are or who your dad is. And I know I keep bringing that up, but it kind of ties into a lot of things, right? And so could you, for those that don't know, talk a little bit about who your dad is and why he's so controversial?
Controversial is a word. Notorious is another one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really strange to me because he's just my dad. Mm-hmm. And I've missed a whole lot of him being the sheriff. This whole brand development that he's had over the last probably decade. I've been gone for a lot of it. So getting to experience that now is bizarre, but it's amazing. My dad was he was a good dad. He taught me everything that I needed to know, that everything a father should teach his son. That started with hard work. That started with him doing long days, providing for our family. Not just that, but being a good husband and being a good father. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and the age gap between us is only about 6.5 years between the oldest and youngest.
Wow.
5 kids.
Wow.
So, he and my mom were nuts, trying to raise 5 kids during a lot of challenges that came through that. Early in my life, he was an entrepreneur. So he was starting businesses a lot in Utah. We lived in Utah at one point where he had like a paintball and skate shop. Yeah, I remember it because, obviously there's paintball guns everywhere and skateboards and a pool table and a little sofa with not Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, whichever one on PlayStation 2. So it was like, but that, that was, very on. And then, he did, he always had a business venture going. Even after he became a police officer, there was always a side hustle. There was always that next project. And so, that's how I grew up with him as my dad. And then, I graduated high school and left on a mission for my church. And at that time, before I had, around the time I had left, just after, he decided that he was going to be running for sheriff. And it was cool. It was like, oh yeah, cool. My dad's running for sheriff, but I didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
And, man, 2 years on the mission, I got to come back and, you're totally not isolated, but you practice the discipline and like, you're not contacting your family. You're focused in on what you're doing. You're really committing yourself out there. And so, I missed a lot of that. And then about 6 weeks after I came home from my mission, I was in the Army. So,
wow.
I missed, the first campaign, the second campaign. And, really what set it off was him being my dad, but with a platform. So then all of a sudden he wasn't just my dad. He was almost like everybody's dad. And everybody got to see that side of him that I grew up with. And what really sparked it off was two things. It was a video that he did in the front seat of his truck, and he lip synced the This Cowboy's Hat by Chris Ledoux.
Oh my God.
And that went gangbusters. I think it got like 50 million hits on Facebook. All these horny middle-aged women were just assaulting him in the comments. It was insane.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was so wild. It's like, what the heck, man? Like, you're saying that about my dad? Like,
right.
what?
That's kind of weird, huh?
And then the next big thing was during COVID. He had already kind of gained some reputation with stuff that he had done on the border. He had already kind of had a platform. But the big thing that set it off was his stance on the vaccines for his department and his stance on the shutdowns for COVID. And he was like, listen, we are not enforcing anything COVID. We're not enforcing businesses to shut down, people to stay in their homes. We're not doing that. I'm not making my employees get this vaccine. I'm not going to get it. So if you want me to, you know where to shove it. And that was one of the things that really put him on the map. In addition to, a great career, as a sheriff, also, being on Live PD, and there was one more show. 60 Days In was the other big one, and then all the
wow, I didn't know he was on all that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So that's a good lead in to the Fear Not Do Right, because there's a lot behind that name. And you said that was his campaign slogan one of the years that he ran?
Yeah, so in 2016, that was kind of like the mantra, and that was kind of always something that we've believed in as a family.
Right.
That's instilled in me. If you're doing the right thing, you don't have anything to worry about. If you're doing the right thing, you're good to go. You're fine. And so, that was kind of like that campaign slogan. And after that the 2016 campaign, he was like, you know what, let's put it on a t-shirt, make a little LLC. It can be like a little apparel company, and a lot at the time, some of these brands like Grunt Style, 9line, Ranger Up, like kind of these companies were coming up. There wasn't really a law enforcement one yet, so he's like, let's just start it, see what happens. And so that was kind of like a thing he and I had as I was entering in the military. And then in 2022, there was a lot of things that were bothering me. I had, I was in my last year in the Army, so I was obviously looking forward to getting out and what that looked like. And, I was also starting to get a little bit more involved and see what was going on politically, as my dad is an elected official. And we ended up going to, was it 2022? Yeah.
Yeah, you told me that's when you started, because that's the year I started.
Yeah, so 2022 is when I started the podcast, but it was about 6 months before that, 2021 into 2022. I'd gone to a couple political events at like Turning Point and the Heritage Foundation. And man, there was so many crazy people that you see at these things, these huge names and icons. You're like, oh my gosh, like that's that person. I see him on Fox. That's Tucker Carlson. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And it was weird too, because they all wanted a piece of my dad, which was just, it was different.
He's authentic, man. That's why. Yeah.
And so, that was weird, but, I started listening to these people and what they were saying and what these issues they were bringing up was, and I didn't like it, because they were just bitching about everything with no direction. They're like, hey, what do you think about this issue? Well, then they talk around the issue, but they want to get to the core of like, well, here's what we should do. And so, the Turning Point event was kind of weird. And then, because there was a lot of that. And then at the Heritage Foundation, it was a, super secret squirrel, invite only. And this girl that I was kind of dating at the time was like, hey, do you want to come with me to this? I'm keynoting. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm interested in this girl. I'm not going to say no. So, so I went to that, and it was very strange because they were all like senators or former congressmen, former congressmen.
Right.
I actually had breakfast with Mike Pence
No
at this
kidding.
event. And I'm like,
Wow. Was that a little surreal?
it was a little surreal, but in a way that was like cool. Like, oh man, I'm meeting all these people. But also in a way like, this is it. Like, you guys suck. You guys are like hardly real people at all. And it was the same
Right.
thing where they were just, it was just this empty echo chamber of
Yeah.
here's the problems and
Right.
here's how we stand on it. It's like, okay, bro, like you're talking about China, you're talking about all this crazy stuff. Like, where's the solution? And one of my friends, they had a podcast, and like it was just one of those things where you're like, wow, you have a podcast? Wow, you do. You have this kind of reach with that. And they explained to me, I was like, I kind of want to do something. I don't know how to do it. I don't know if I want to. And what they told me was that, like, listen, there's 365 million people in the United States, and there's only 2 million podcasts worldwide. There is more than enough there's more than enough ears to listen to your show. And there's like, and as I thought about it, you realize people are desperate, especially in this day and age, for any sort of guidance, any sort of leadership. And that's why we have so much bad leadership out there, is because they're taking advantage of that.
Right.
But it was one of those things where it's like, all right, man, like,
You're the guy.
well, not necessarily that I'm the guy, but it's like there are people out there who have the solutions to this stuff,
Right.
who have things figured out. They're subject matter experts. Let's get them talking about these issues and provide those practical kinetic solutions that anybody could take in the same day, apply in their own lives.
Yeah. And when I said you're the guy, in the same way that I'm the guy, I don't have the answers, but I will go try to look for people that bring value to the show, that can bring value to the audience. Because heck, I don't have the answers.
Right.
Yeah. So that's really good. I really appreciate that about you and about your dad. And that comes across like in spades. And whether it's visual through a video podcast or audio podcast, I think people pick up on that. And I think that people are really craving something real right now. Like, I think they're really freaking burnt out and tired of all the BS. And so I appreciate that you have stepped forward to do that, because that's not easy. That is more of a commitment than people realize. It really, truly is. And for you, though, it's great because you've got a great network to pull from.
Yeah, I've been extremely fortunate with some of the people that I've had on my show.
Oh my gosh, it's been crazy.
Yeah, I mean, from the get-go, and a lot of that has to do with just being at the right time, at the right place. Having Sheriff Mark Lamb as your dad kind of helps. But even still, that first episode that I did, it was on a very cheap like recorder, like you'd see in a courthouse. And I was just like, I'm going to do this podcast. I want to do it. And it so happened that week, he was doing, my dad was doing a like some sort of promo with Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips from True to Vote.
Yeah.
And so, they're like, that's a pretty, they're doing a lot, especially at that time, they were doing a lot. So I'm like, I'm going to like, hey, give me their number. I'm going to text them. I'll see if they want to show up to this place 45 minutes early, and we'll just do a quick podcast, see how it goes, knock out the first one. And they agreed, and, just started going for it after that. And it's very surprising what people do for you if you just ask.
Oh yeah, I know. There have been some times that I've asked people and they actually said yes to come on the show. And then I went, oh crap.
Yeah.
What do I do now? I don't know if I'm the right person for this. So I want to move on to something so I did a little bit of reconnaissance on you, and I binge watched maybe 1 or 2 episodes of interviews with you in preparation for this. And one of my favorite interviews of you was with, I can't remember exactly the channel. You'll remember. I think it was like Combustive Discussion or something.
Yeah.
Out of Colorado.
Yeah.
Those 2 dudes that you did that interview with. And you talked about in that interview, and this is just what you just said shows this about you, that you will just figure out a way. Like, that is just the way that you operate. You will figure out a way to get stuff done. And I know that comes from your dad too, and your upbringing. But you talked about on the back of your helmet, which you might even have there. I don't know. You
No,
talked
I
on
don't have it with me right now.
the back of your helmet. There's something, and you said you weren't supposed to have anything, but you had a patch or something that said, "No one is coming. It's up to you."
Yep.
And that ties in directly into a partial discussion we had about personal responsibility and accountability. Could you speak to that "no one is coming, it's up to you" idea, and how that applied to you in combat?
Well, I mean, man, at the end of the day, like you're your own responsibility, right? And then as you build on with a family, with kids, that all changes that dynamic and it adds to that responsibility. And whether it be financially or whether it be in a very real life scenario, like no one, first of all, no one cares. Like, and a lot of people don't, like, they kind of understand that, and it's a little bit more cynical, but like honestly, no one cares about what you're going through. No one cares, right? Like, what difference does it make with the price of rice in China? Who cares? And as to that, like, no one is coming, right? When at the end of the day, so many people have been able to get very fortunately, and they should count their blessings. And I've been on the receiving end of that, but like people have helped me out. But when it really comes down to brass tacks, like you have to be prepared to get it done, to find a way. Because more often, like there is, like, we do live in the real world, and lives are won and lost every single day. Even as extreme as like, in a preparedness way, but like in a, listen, if you're not able to do it, like there probably isn't anybody else, because everybody else, nobody else is thinking like that. There's such a small percentage of people that think like that. Just like 2 weeks ago is a crazy example, but I was in the parking lot in Casa Grande, Arizona, of O'Reilly's auto shop, and about 100 yards away from, I'm fixing my taillight, and 100 yards away from me, there was a really bad car crash. This dually and this little sedan impacted each other. The truck went completely through a building,
Oh my
and this
God.
little sedan was left mangled in the street. And it's like, nobody's coming.
Did
Like
people
there's
just like
nobody
drive
coming right now.
by? Nobody stopped, or what
Nobody
happened?
stopped. People, I mean, people were pulling out their phones and stuff, but videotape and stuff. They're like, oh my gosh, what happened?
Videoing?
Um, yeah. And so I mean, I like saw this crash happen. I grabbed like a med bag from my truck and I
Yeah.
ran over there. And dude, there was this girl, she from early 20s. And she had a pulse, wasn't breathing. The other driver was okay. There was nobody else injured, but this girl, I mean, she was messed up in a bad way. And me and this other guy, like, we ran up on scene, like we were there, and then we're like, is there anyone over there? You guys call 911. We pulled this girl out of this truck, and I ended up giving her chest compressions for about 4.5 minutes until she like started breathing again. And as I understand, she like started breathing again, and then it was about 4.5, almost 5 minutes after, when first responders showed up, and then she was able to go to the hospital. But if it wasn't for that like instinct that guy had, that I had, where it was like, listen, if we don't run over there right now, like someone's probably dying. If
Right.
we hadn't ran over there,
If you
that
hadn't have
girl would
been
have
there.
died.
I know. Thank God you were there.
And it's that, and like that's like a very like real, like, holy crap. Oh gosh, hold on.
What'd you do? You're going dark on us. I bet his camera went to sleep or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what it did.
I know how to fix that on DSLRs. Anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, as I was saying, like that's a very real example of like nobody is coming.
Right.
Like there's 100 people standing around here right now. Not one of them is about to run up and help this girl. Not one of them ran up to help us as we were trying to, get this girl figured out. And, you know, in the military side of things, like, you know, fortunately first responders showed up and stuff, but man, when you're training for stuff like combat, right? I was a paratrooper. We're jumping out of planes. The whole idea is that we're going to put you in the worst situation possible
Mhm.
to where it's going to be down to you and whoever looks like you on the ground. You guys are going to get together in a little group of paratroopers
Mhm.
and you're going to go do whatever it is that we planned on you doing, right? If
Mhm.
it's kill bad guys, right? Or attack this, secure that.
Right.
Like,
I think
no
an
one's
what
coming.
I think an important way to apply this though to, you know, the everyday defender, we'll call that, or the everyday concealed carrier in America is that you really don't know what's going to happen. And like when you were on the ground, when stuff was going down, you're having to think and problem solve in real time. And the more training a person can get in that, the better off they're going to be in life, in anything in life, whether it's a high stress situation and an emergency, or if it's just trying to handle a financial emergency in your household or whatever, you know, there's all different kinds of things. And I think having those kind of skill sets and tools built in or trained into you is valuable to anyone.
Well, you know, it's not even necessarily an emergency either.
Right.
Like if you're a small business owner, nobody
Right.
is coming to save your business. No one
Exactly.
cares about your business.
Yeah.
So how do you how do you make it happen? How do you execute?
Mhm.
Um, you know, that's a whole other thing where it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be like those quick reactive, like no one's coming, we got to figure it out. But it's like,
Mhm.
you know, why wait until that stressful moment? Why wait until it counts anyways? Like
Mhm.
let's move back 6 months, you know, let's move left of bang and say, okay, like if
Right.
let's figure this
Look
out so
ahead.
that way when no one shows up, we're still okay.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a great mindset to have. So, I forgot where I was gonna go with that. You're so easy to listen to and so fun to interview that I get wrapped up in what you're saying so well that I'm have a hard time looking forward and because I'm so in the moment. Um, well, so oh, okay. I wanted to talk about one of what you talked about in another podcast about the biggest challenge that you faced. You said that one of the biggest challenges that you went through was the 18 X-ray program. Could you explain that for us and what you took away from that?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to join the military since about I was 14 and I watched Rambo or First Blood Part 1. And you know, like that first scene where the cops are chasing him into the woods and he's
Uh-huh.
just taking them out one by one and you're just like, yeah, dude, like that's this that is it right there. That set me, I'm like, okay, that's what he can do because he's a Green Beret. I need to be a Green Beret.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't, but there was a lot of guys out there at the time where they were just starting to put out content about special operations, right? About 10 years into the GWAT, you had all the Navy SEAL propaganda coming out. They just killed Osama bin Laden, Zero Dark 30, American Sniper, all that stuff. And I didn't really have an interest in being a SEAL, but there was two dudes who really like, you know, who I really thought highly of as a 14-year-old, and one of them was Tom Spooner, who was a Delta Force guy, who's like, you know, he just did a podcast on Sean Ryan, and it is
Did he?
phenomenal.
Wow.
But the other one was Pat McNamara,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he actually he had a video at one point, an interview where he talks about being an SF baby or doing the 18 X-ray program, and essentially you go from infantry basic training to airborne school to SOP-C, and then straight into special forces assessment and selection, and then into the Q course. And so I got home from my mission. I went to the recruiters and I was like, hey, I want an 18 X-ray contract. And they're like, we don't have any of those available. Do you want to go be a Cav Scout? And I'm like, hey, you know, I respect your time. call me back when you have an 18 X-ray contract. And like the next day they call me back. They're like, hey, you still want that 18 X-ray? I was like, yes, dude. And so, yeah, I got home from my mission in July and I was at MEPS in August. So, and I didn't end up going to basic training until about October, but I got my 18 X-ray contract and I was in a very, the guys that I was, the group that I was with, the other 18 X-ray dudes, I mean, you want to talk about studs. Every one of them were either collegiate athletes who just, instead of going to the draft, they ended up going to basic training. Like, it was crazy. Super, super smart guys, super fit, super motivated. And so went through basic training, infantry basic, airborne school, got to SOPSI where I had some injuries. And then I ended up going to Special Forces selection, didn't get selected, went back about a month later, didn't get selected again. And at that point, they gave me a 2-year return date. And I was pretty beat up. I was pretty butthurt. And then one of the special operations recruiting battalion guys from psychological operations was like, hey, man, do you want to go to Bravo 9? It's our direct action, tactical, cool guy unit over at PSYOP. And I was like, heck yeah, dude. When can I go to selection? Like, can I get like, and they're like, yeah, come on over. And then I ended up getting non-selected from there too. And they actually, in my exit, they were like, hey, listen, you know, you didn't get selected, but you know, you performed really well. You might want to give Special Forces a try. And I was like, bro, you gotta be kidding me, man. I just came there. So I ended up in the 82nd Airborne, which honestly was a huge blessing. A lot of the guys that I had originally gone to selection with, those other X-rays, a lot of them didn't deploy. A lot of them didn't deploy. A lot of them didn't get some of the opportunities that I had. So I was really grateful for the time that I had in the 82nd. And the guys that I got to serve with were, you know, that same breed, that same class. The 82nd is very interesting. At least it was at the time. The majority of guys that you saw on the enlisted side were either coming from the Special Forces pipeline, where they either were non-selected or, you know, Q course drops, or they were Ranger Regiment guys. Either they didn't pass RIP or RASP, or they got kicked out of Ranger Regiment. And so you had this group of dudes who had the attitude, had the aptitude, and they had a huge chip on their shoulder because you know, it's kind of like Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma's defined by what it's not. It's not Texas. I mean, it's like virtually identical in everything other than it's just not Texas.
Yeah.
Same thing with the 82nd. Like, we're basically special operations, but we're not. And we're like, a lot of guys define themselves by being not soft.
Right.
But one of the things that I really took away from that experience, because it sucked, man. It was tough. You know, the physical lengths you push yourself to in those programs are pretty crazy. You know, people watch it they see it in movies and TV shows and stuff. But, you know, one of the things that I took away from it was, you know, once I got into my unit and I was, you know, licking my wounds, I determined to myself, look, just because I'm not in a tier 1 organization, and I say tier 1, like, you know, people get like, oh, Rangers and SF, they're tier 2 and what? Shut up. But I told myself, just because I'm not in a tier 1 organization doesn't mean I can't be a tier 1 individual. Just because you're not, you know, SEAL Team 6 doesn't mean you can't have that same mentality, that same method of execution, and that same sharpness and performance measure where you're like, I'm not there, but I'm pushing myself to be there as much as I can, as much as I can even reasonably wrap my mind around it. I mean, some of the things those guys do is crazy, but I told myself, just because I'm not a tier 1 operator doesn't mean I can't be a tier 1 individual. And, you know, I had a lot of amazing opportunities over there in the 82nd. I was a team leader. I picked up my first team about 3 months after getting to the unit as a PFC, as a E3. You know, I picked up a fire team, which was awesome. And I was able to kind of maintain either having a fire team or getting to run a fire team with some of my best friends pretty much my entire time in until, you know, getting to do some squad leader stuff, getting to do having a lot of really good opportunities there.
So you've had a lot of leadership positions, and a lot of us in the firearms community are leaders, whether it's within our own little community locally or in bigger groups. And I love what you said there. Like that was just so far, that's the pinnacle of the interview for me. Like that is the quotable moment for sure, because it doesn't matter where God plants you, right where you are, you can make change and you can make a difference. And what is he doing?
Just brighten it up a little bit.
You are super picky, aren't you? Mine is too bright. Anyway, yeah, bloom where you're planted, dude, right? I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. You can always level up. And leveling up doesn't have to do with the group of people that you're with all the time, but I guess it is important the company that you keep. But on the topic of leadership, like you of anybody would know, what kind of leadership, what does that mean to you based on your background? But how can people apply true leadership in their everyday lives, in their families, in their communities? I think we're lacking a lot of that. And I think there's a misconception about what leadership really looks like.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of it, especially in the industry, a lot of guys rest on their laurels. You know, they look to the past. They say, "I was this, I
Right.
was that," and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
dude. First of all, no one gives a shit. No one cares what you were. They only care about what you're doing now, right?
Mhm.
That's what that's your quantifier right there. What are you doing now? You know, when it comes to leadership, I think there's two main components. One, you can never ask your guys not to do something that you want to do yourself, first and foremost. But two, it's about maximizing their potential, right? It's about taking an individual, helping them capture that vision, taking either an individual, a group of individuals, and having that vision, capturing that vision, and then maximizing, their output, making the best out of your
Mhm.
men, right? It's
Mhm.
not about you, it's about your
Mhm.
guy.
Mhm.
What does Private Dunham mean? What does Private Diaz need? Where are they best served? Because another aspect of that, and especially when you get into like that command and control aspect of either running a business, running a fire team, right? Who's best served where? Sometimes, it's not about, like, you got to be able to put your guys in the right position to be successful.
Mhm.
And I think that's really what leadership is giving your people the tools to be successful and teaching them how to use those tools to be successful, and then giving them the autonomy to be successful.
Yes, that's so important that you said autonomy, because um I think there's a theme, and again, I can only relate this to firearms training, right? Because this is the community
Yeah.
that we serve. But giving people the autonomy as an instructor to go try something that you just tried to instill in them skill wise and not micromanage them all the time is so valuable, I think, because people learn so much better that way than they do from having someone barking at them all the time. Like they have to learn stuff themselves. This is also like a position of service, I think, whether you want to talk about it from like a father-son aspect in, or a mother-daughter aspect in your family, or whether you're leading a group in your community, or whether you're a business owner. All of these things apply. It's all the same stuff packaged in a slightly different way, but the core values and the core principles are there no matter what it is that you're doing. So if you're like if you're in a gift, if you have the gift of leadership and you're in that role, then that is a service-based role.
Yeah.
And
And, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
go ahead.
One of the other things too is I think that there's a big difference between leadership and positions of leadership and positions of authority.
Mm,
Because there are a lot of times where I saw guys who had leadership positions, right? They were team leaders, squad leaders, platoon sergeants, first sergeants, company commanders, battalion commanders, and they sucked. They were
mhm.
horrible leaders.
Yeah.
They left you feeling uninspired, unmotivated. They
Mhm.
let you know that you can't do it. That's what their leadership style was.
Mhm.
Um, And maybe it wasn't even that they were intentionally bad leaders. Maybe they just were never taught to be good leaders to begin with. But there's, at the same time that I was seeing bad leadership, I was also seeing guys like this dude, man. He was a wildcat. Old Jesse Larson. And if he ever sees this, man, but so he came from Ranger Bat. He was a Ranger private. So goes straight into Ranger Regiment, 175, 11 Bravo. And he's over there in Afghanistan kicking ass, whatever. He comes back. And before he goes to Ranger school, he ends up getting a DUI and they kick him out of Ranger Regiment. He comes to our unit. So I get into the company with Larson, and this guy at the time, he was a corporal, like wasn't even a sergeant or anything. He's just just an E4. And I swear to you, that dude ran the company. Really? That dude freaking ran the company, and he was a wild man. Dude was always drinking, always he was a terrible garrison soldier, and he still is to this day. But when we went and we did either field ops or, jumps training, anything like that, when it came to actually doing the job, he ran the show, not just in a team environment or a squad environment or a platoon. He ran the show for the company, 100 dudes. He's the guy. He's the dude. And it was bizarre to see where it's like, you got like these 20-year salty dogs who are just like, so Corporal Larson, what do you think we should do on this? Right? Like, he's clearly not in the leadership position
right.
But he had that leadership role where guys look to him. And that was one of the things that I tried to make sure of myself, that, even if I wasn't like the guy in charge, like I wanted to be reliable, right? Where like top down, bottom up, where, if they needed a job done, hey, he's going to get it done. Right. Lamb is he's going to take his team, he's going to take his element, and he is going to accomplish that mission. And likewise, I wanted my guys to know, like, hey, Lamb is going to get it done. Whatever he sets out to do, we are going to follow him because we know that he's leading us in the right direction. And a lot of the times, like, everyone who's ever kind of been in a leadership role or anything like that will tell you most of the time they're making it up. They have no idea what they're doing.
That's probably true. Yeah.
But, talk to
figure
any
it out, right?
Talk to any business owner. They have no idea what they're doing.
I know. But they figure it out.
You got to figure it out because guess what? No one's coming.
Right. Well, you tied that in well. Very well done. Yeah. And, tying that into, and I think common sense would tell you, tying that into your everyday life, holding yourself accountable. I think that whatever it is that you do in your everyday life translates to everything outside of your household, outside of your personal discipline, your personal accountability is like, I think that's where it starts. I really do. I think if you can't keep promises to yourself, you're letting yourself down all the time, you're telling yourself lies and justifying all the BS that you're doing, then you're never going to be able to level up in any way outside of the house anyway. You're never going to be able to go places. So I think personally, that's where it all begins.
Absolutely. How can others respect you if you don't respect yourself?
Absolutely. I know. It's true. And it's such a simple concept. It's just really sad that most people aren't willing to do the work to really be better, So I want to, because we're running out of time, Cade. We've only got 15 minutes left, guys. So if you have questions for Cade, get those in the comments now. We'll be gathering those here soon. Gosh, you are so much fun. I just can't even. I want to get into training a little bit. So we talked about this on the phone. You have a certain approach to training you kind of wanted to share with our audience. And I really liked your take on this. You talked about the responsibility of having a mindset, the right mindset going into training. And you talked about leadership there too. So it all kind of like goes together. It all folds in together. But what do you have to say about training for anybody watching?
I mean, there's a lot of people training out there. There's a lot of people trying to train out there. And I don't think any of it is inherently bad, but there is a lot of there's a lot of people missing the mark. I'll say that, where, they're not, their head's in the right place. They're doing the right thing. It's like, yes, get out there, do that. But I think that, like I said, people are missing the mark. It's not about necessarily a sub-second draw time, but more so, people get really into the weeds on, some of the gears, some of the, taking your pistol and making it all, having a Gucci Glock or different things like that, not taking the careful considerations as to what actually matters, right? Because there's so many elements outside of a flat range that people are not prepared for.
Right.
To include, like, shooting circumstances, right? If you got to draw your weapon, fire rounds in a live environment, like, there's a lot of preparation that is not being done and that can't be done on a flat range. And so I think one of the biggest things is, and what I go into with people, is MET-TC. And this is a very, like, if you've ever picked up a Ranger handbook, or if you've ever trained with like infantry cats, like, what MET-TC is. So it's breaking down your mission planning. So, like, what is your mission, right? What is the so it's mission, equipment, time, terrain, troops available, and then civilian considerations. So, I always break it down to guys like this. Like, what if you're going to Walmart on the 1st of the month in a bad part of town and it's 9:00 p.m., right? Like, you got to get milk, you got to get bread, you got to get eggs, and you're going to the worst Walmart you've ever been to at 9:00 on the 1st of the month. So all the, like, the EBT cards just came in, like, that's a very real world scenario that is very sketchy. Like, and if you don't believe me, go to a Walmart at 9:00 at night on the 1st of the month, and you're
I'm not going to.
It's a bad time. It is so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But break it down. Like, okay, what's my mission? What is what is the enemy factor there? What is the most likely? Sorry, I misspoke when I said so. Enemy is the E in MET-TC, but it's like, what is the threat, right? What is the most likely?
Yeah.
The potential threat, the most likely threat. What time am I going, right? What time considerations do I need to make? What is the terrain like there? Very like, where am I parking? Where am I going? What is my route to and from the milk, bread, and eggs in the Walmart to my car?
Right.
What equipment do I have in my car? What resources do I have in my car? Who is with me? Is my wife with me? Is my toddler with me? Because that can completely changes what I'm going to do. If I'm alone, I'm going to be a hero and I'm going to shoot the bad guy. I'm going to be a hero. If my wife and daughter are with me, guess what? We're getting out of Dodge and you will never know that we were there. And then also, like, the civilian considerations, right? If you are going to have to take those shots, like, how do you, like, think about, okay, how do I maneuver in this space so I can take the safest position of, like, putting effective rounds on target without threat to anyone else around me, to where it's, solely right there.
Right.
Take that into consideration. Same thing with when it comes to your medical preparation, your things like that. And when you break it down like that, you realize you don't need a whole lot to train right. You don't need a whole lot to be effective in your approach to practical kinetic solutions.
Right.
One of the other things is, like, guys with, like, Gucci guns that they're going to the range with, they're all super fast. It's like, that's amazing, man. Go shoot somebody with it and then lose it for the next few years while it's sitting in an evidence locker. Like, that sucks. Whereas, like a $350 blue, cop deal Glock is like, you're not going to miss that much,
I never thought about that before. That's funny.
So, like, those are the kind of considerations that people do not make. And it's like,
Right.
all right, let's talk about that before we talk about, your sub-second draw time, because that really doesn't matter. And then again, think about your family. If you're out there with your wife, is your wife carrying? Does she have any medical stuff? Do you have any medical stuff in the car? What is the dynamic there, right? Because again, if I'm with my wife and my toddler, totally different game plan compared to if I'm with 3 of my buddies who I can shoot, move, and communicate with. Then it's a completely different story.
Yeah, totally. And those are really good things. When you first started laying that out, I'm like, how does this apply to civilians? But then obviously it does, because you put it in a Walmart scenario, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, totally. But I don't think a lot of people think those things through, nor are they trained to, or even consider it, because maybe they've never even heard of that before. I mean, we are so cushy in America for the most part that even the people that are gun people really have a sore lacking of awareness of anything at any particular time. I mean, I've been around a lot of gun people, and I don't know if some people just are just lacking it because they just don't have it, or if they just haven't considered it and haven't tried to train it in to what they're doing. And you know what? There's some people that they don't even care about that part of it. They just want to go do fun gun stuff on the gun range and then go home. I get that. But like, to each their own. It's America, right?
Right.
But if your job is to be the defender of your family, and all you are focused on is the gun, and you're like, I have the gun on, and I bought this holster and this gun, I'm good to go. No, dude, you're not good to go. You're missing the most important component. And also, what other tools do you have? Because if you only have one tool, then that's the only tool you can use.
Right.
And your brain should be the most important tool.
If all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail.
Right. Right. Totally. And it's like, I don't know. I think some people like get that concept, but I don't know how much they really apply that in their day-to-day lives. You know, like for me, when I first started learning about situational awareness, is right what we call it in the firearms community, I just started auditing myself. Like I just started paying attention. Like, what are my natural habits? What do I do when I go into the grocery store? Do I actually look around and pay attention to what's going on? Do I look through the windows before I even get to the grocery store? What do I look at in the parking lot before I even like find a parking spot? Am I strategic about where I park? Those kinds of things, right?
Well, again, like the biggest teacher is experience, right?
Right.
How fast can you run 150 meters, 200 meters? Can you move a 200-pound or 150-pound body out of a vehicle, right? Like if I were to take the most recent experience that I had that I brought up earlier, like, I sprinted 100 yards, we'll say 100 yards to get on target. And then all of a sudden it's like, you're processing all that information and then going through that OODA loop into actions on. And then again, like not only do you have to run get to the objective, then you have to go actions on. And, in the case, like, yeah, I didn't have to plan for, or I didn't have to have a plan for any enemy considerations, but, like getting that girl out of that truck. Right. And then being able to, okay, go through the whole medical thing. Let's get into, like actually fixing her or getting her to a position, like place where she can be fixed. Right.
Right.
Like those are other considerations. Like it's not just a one and done thing. Like you run through that planning process and you don't have to be like super specific, but if you're going out and you're doing something, just run through it. If you want to set up standard SOPs with your family or with your team or whoever you're doing stuff with, hey, just set up general SOPs. Hey, if we ever see someone in trouble, like here's what our plan should be. Right. We know we have a med bag in the truck. Like, and one of the things that I've recently taken to doing is not only do I keep a full trauma kit in the truck, but I also keep a carbine in there. With the way things are going, like it's just so, like between the border and the upticks in crime and stuff, like you got to have that force multiplier, right? Even for yourself, where it's like, okay, look, I got a pistol. My pistol's supposed to get me to my rifle, and then I got my rifle, and my rifle's supposed to get me either through the fight or out of the fight. Same thing with your medical stuff, right? Like, hey, you have like a tourniquet that can, shut something off on one of the extremities, but then what? And so you don't necessarily have to have like this deep, detailed military decision-making process planning system or anything like that, but you can just do it once through, just do a run through in your mind. Hey, if something were to go down right now, how fast can I run to my truck and grab a carbine and then, like, take on this, whatever threat is going on, right? Or my medical bag or whatever. Where is it? Where am I? Just that's kind of situational awareness. And then, once you get into a situation where it's like, are you physically capable of being in that zone and being in that situation? Which is another, that whole fitness aspect is a completely different can of worms.
Oh, that's a huge can of worms, and it's super important. And I don't know that a lot of people really test themselves in that department. I mean, we know a majority of Americans are definitely not fit. So I think that should be as much a part of the personal responsibility of gun ownership as anything else. Then that's my own opinion about that, because I think the argument is, well, if I got a gun, I don't have to be in shape. And I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. So,
well, not even like just being physically fit, but also your mental dexterity, right? Because a lot of those situations, like it is fast-paced information processing, right? Who's bad, who's not, who's where, who, you're having to make so many critical decisions instantaneously if any sort of situation comes up, right? It's that information processing.
Right.
And so, my wife always is like, I'll like point out like, oh, look at that coyote, look at that rabbit, she's like, how are you seeing that, man? Like, what are you? And it's just like, I've been very fortunate in, through the special forces pipelines and different trainings that I've done in the military, where it's like, you do some of the Kimes games where it's like, hey, we're going to run 2 miles and there's going to be faces on the trees every few meters. And you're going to have to remember every face in order with like all this different information. You're like, oh my gosh, dude, that's nuts. But they do those kinds of training methods for a reason.
Hey, Adam, now we have a new idea for a new drill we can do.
Yeah.
He's coming next month to Montana for training. So we'll have to integrate that into our training. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you guys didn't ask any questions in the comments. I don't know why. Maybe it's because maybe you have the same problem I do, where you start listening to Cade and then you just don't pay attention to anything else. And you don't even know the time is just flying by. It's okay. But we only have a couple more minutes left. So if you do have a last minute question, pop that in the comments. Cade, tell people where they can find out more about you.
So if you want to learn more about me and what I'm doing, go to my main Instagram is cade.r.lamb.
We put it in the bottom there.
Yeah, there we go. If you want to hear what I have to say, and if you like listening to this face, again, I have a face for radio. If you like listening to this stuff, I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of special operators and a lot of other cool guys. So go check it out on the Fear Not Do Right podcast. We got some amazing, I've got some really big stuff.
And you can't even announce it yet, can you?
I can't announce it yet. We're not announcing it yet, but we've got some really, really cool stuff coming down the pipe over there. And then one of the things that we didn't quite get into, but I've also been very fortunate and, just circumstantially have become something of like a little bit of an SME on the Arizona border and like cartel stuff down here. So a lot of that stuff.
Are you going to come on Defenders Uncensored? Will you do that? Okay. Guys. So I'm going to be talking about that later, but I'm going to try to nail him down like next week to be on Defenders Uncensored. So go ahead.
But yeah, so all that stuff is going to be at Sonoran Asset Group on Instagram, and then all the Twitter handles and stuff. And if you want to support any of that, go to fearnotdoright.com, where we got some cool merch and again, more cool projects that I can't quite announce yet, but they're definitely coming.
Do you have an email list on your website so people can stay in the loop?
So that's one of the things that we're working on right now.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I want.
But if you go to any of the social medias and you want to keep up on stuff, that's going to be the best way to do it right now.
Awesome. What do you got, Adam?
Hey, Cade. So you and I live rather close to each other. So if you get bored this weekend, I got a fighting handgun concepts class coming up Saturday, Sunday. So if you want to jump in, some, all, whatever, and you're sitting around, got nothing to do, it's pretty intense. So come play.
It's my
Heck
favorite
yeah.
class. Favorite class. Yeah, you were talking about being in shape, being in good shape. Adam will test that for sure.
Well, I can tell you that I'll probably fail that test.
No, you won't.
Come play.
So any parting thoughts, Cade, before we wrap it up tonight?
Oh man. Let's just hit the big ones, First, no one's coming to save you. Two, if you can't be if you're not in a tier 1 organization, that doesn't mean you can't be a tier 1 individual. And just
and abs are made in the kitchen.
Abs are made in the kitchen. That's right. Not in my kitchen.
That's what I hear. Is that true? I don't know.
It is
I don't
true.
have abs, so I don't know, but I'm sure they're there somewhere.
I did like a really hard carnivore diet like about a year and a half ago, and it worked 100%.
Yeah.
It took about 2 months and I was shredded. So
good to know. Sweet.
But that was 2 years ago. That's no longer the case. I got married and now my wife cooks for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That is so awesome. I'm super happy for you. Awesome. All right. Well, stay in the green room. I'm going to finish up and then I'll be there in just a minute. Thank you for your time tonight, Cade.
Thank you, Laura.
All right, guys. So let's wrap up for tonight. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my paid supporters at locals.com. That is where we're going to be hosting that Defenders Uncensored episode with Cade Lamb. And there's another guy too, Matt Christensen. I don't know if you remember him from one of my early episodes in 22. He was really, really good. I've got him coming back on as well. And so we're going to be hosting that in the Defenders Live community on locals.com. And the reason we're hosting it there is so we cannot get kicked off of YouTube and Facebook, because we're going to be talking about issues that some consider to be controversial and we don't think they should be. So we are going to have candid, open conversations there. And I really invite you to join us over at locals.com. Just search up Defenders Live in the Discover tab. And next week, you can expect the Attorney General of Montana to be on Defenders Live. Austin Knudsen will be on talking about protecting the Second Amendment, as well as other topics that will be interesting to our audience. So stay tuned for that. We're also going to have a few other guests coming down the pike. And if you don't know these names, that's okay. I'll be announcing them later. Gabe New, Cassie Crago, Mike Ox, Sandra Woodruff, and Whitney Lindsay of Heligunner they're all in the lineup, along with many more. I also think Tim Reedy is going to be in that lineup as well, and AJ Zito. So we're going to be bringing back some people that have already been on the show, might be, like a year or so since we've talked to them, and some new people as well. So it's going to be a really hot summer. Really, really excited about bringing you these guests. Hoping to learn a lot alongside all of you. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We will see you next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Until then, take care.